right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Series 10 of the Climate Pioneers Show. My name is Cherry, and I'm the founder of Above and Beyond Recruitment, a climate tech recruitment business working with startups and scale-ups to hire mission-driven talent and build their teams. And throughout the course of this series, we're speaking with founders who are focusing on how to help us adapt to climate change and make the world around us more resilient. They'll be sharing their journeys so far, the challenges they've faced along the way, and the lessons that they've learnt. So if you're a founder yourself, we hope that this will inspire you, inform you, and hopefully make you feel a little bit less alone in that founder journey. And if you're keen to join the mission to save the planet and transition your career into the climate space, then perhaps these episodes will spark some ideas of what you can do to help. Today, I'm joined by Fain, CEO of Blue Water Intelligence. After a decade leading SaaS companies, Jeremy shifted his focus to climate and water technology, co-founding WI to help governments, hydropower operators, insurers, and communities to forecast and manage water risks in an ever-changing climate. Water is arguably our most critical and increasingly unpredictable resource. BWI is at the forefront of using space and earth data to improve decision-making about floods, droughts, and water security. Jeremy, tell us more about what Blue Water Intelligence does and why it is such a critical problem that you're solving.
So thank you so much, Cherry, for having me today. I'm a huge consumer of podcasts. I listen to podcasts every day. And it's my very first podcast as a speaker. So I would like to thank you for that, because it's an honor for me to join yours. So to get to your question, so at BWI, our goal is to make, as you've perfectly summed up, is to make water risk visible and manageable wherever it strikes. So we use a blend of satellite data and AI to forecast river flows, flood risk, water availability, essentially digitizing river basins for public agencies and businesses. So in a world where water extremes are hitting harder and faster due to climate change, we found out upon starting the company and by talking to the market at that time, back in 2022, that the old ways of monitoring couldn't keep up. So BWI's mission is to give decision makers early, accurate insights to protect lives, livelihoods, and critical infrastructure too.
Amazing. I love that. And how did you make the transition into the space? Because I mentioned before you had, a decade plus of running SaaS businesses in lots of other verticals. What led you into the world of climate resilience and hydrology?
So for me, switching from pure SaaS to climate tech wasn't a single haha moment. As my very first company was already a climate tech, but indeed I had moved in my second company. BWI is my third in a more traditional SaaS business in a building security vertical. So it wasn't a haha moment, but still. There is a climate crisis, right? And tech, when pointed at the right problem, can genuinely move the needle for the planet. So, we've all watched floods devastate communities in the media. And as a builder of a scalable system all my life and an expertise in positioning them to solve market problems, then I thought, well, how can we use the know-how and the collective know-how of my team to help those right on the front lines, right? So this was the real catalyst.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so less of a, like you said, less of an aha moment and more of an evolution into that space, taking what you already knew in building scalable systems and pointing it at this ever increasing problem. And what were the kind of challenges?
In the continental freshwater vertical, which was new to me.
Yes. And so how was that challenge then? Because like you said, that vertical was very new to you. Also, whilst you had done sort of scalable SaaS systems, something that uses satellite data, some complex machine learning, there's a lot of new stuff in there for you. How did you find that transition personally? And how did you bring the expertise in those different domains in?
Okay, so thank you for the question. So for me, the learning curve was and still is very steep. Well, with SaaS, you can often move fast and break things, right?
Yeah.
But in hydrology, you make a mistake in your algorithm and you can literally not save lives. So
Yeah.
I had indeed, as you mentioned, no prior experience in Earth observation, in space technology or in modeling. So my first step was to listen and to learn from scientists, from ex-space agency engineers, from stakeholders who understood water on the ground. So, building that multidisciplinarity into the DNA of the company was critical. The expertise lives in the team, and not only with me as CEO of the company. So, really, it's that mix that makes us capable of tackling these problems.
Yeah. So you yourself are always in learning mode, but then listening, learning, researching, I suppose, from the users
Absolutely.
to build that solution out. That's so interesting. And from a commercial standpoint, I mean, I mentioned as I introduced you and the company, a selection of different kind of groups and stakeholders that will benefit from this technology. But who are you building this for? Who is the kind of key customer, I suppose?
Okay. So when we arrived and talked to the market and looked at the market, there were really two kinds of solutions, but there was a problem that was not addressed. So one of the solutions that still exists and it works, it's weather forecast, right? Weather, what comes, precipitations, put it simply. And another kind of solutions was the metering, the measurement of flows or water levels, but there
Okay.
was no hydrological forecasts. So the hydrological forecast is how the river is going to behave in the next few minutes, hours, days, right? So um, the demand is both public and private. So there's real demand on both sides. Now to answer your question, so public organizations from emergency agencies to water boards need accurate data and forecast to prepare for floods or drought. And meanwhile, businesses in energy, agriculture, civil engineering, insurance need reliable forecasts to make smarter river-proof decisions, if I may say river-proofed. So we serve both public and private clients, sometimes with the same data, but always tailored to the different use cases and risk questions, I would say.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. And I suppose as a business proposition, that gives you really good breadth that you can serve quite a variety of different users with different needs. But I imagine as an early stage business, when you're building a commercial strategy, that can be really hard because how you appeal to both of those different groups and the strategy that you need to go to market in those two different groups is probably quite different. How did you manage that in those early days?
Oh, it's like speaking two dialects of the same language, Cherry. So, public sector projects indeed are long cycle, highly collaborative, and focused on resilience and compliance.
Mm.
Uh, Private sector clients, on the other hand, want to hear about business continuity, return on investment, operational agility. So we show public buyers the societal impact and validation in multi-annual programs, while we build one-year pilots and fast feedback loops with private operators to prove tangible value. So these are really two different ways to sell SaaS. And truth be told, we started with private companies, but now have turned to governments and to public basin authorities. So we do both. And it's actually a good mix, a good combination, because it balances macroeconomic risks.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It
That's
hedges
true.
the risk. Yeah.
And I suppose your success with one feeds into your building your credibility in the other group, right? There are drivers there. One can influence the other, I suppose. But yeah, I was going to ask you what order you did that in, but you just answered that. So you went for the private companies first, and then those kind of the government contracts afterwards. And what did you find particularly challenging in that commercialization go-to-market process? Did you lead on that? Was it you doing that, or did you have someone else in the team?
So it's always a collective effort. I am more of a market person, so obviously I'm in this. I like to meet clients. So to your question of the biggest challenge, so for me there are two kinds of companies. There are the companies that behave and get created in an existing market, and then their goal will be to acquire market share, to win market share against competition. And there are companies that have to actually build their own market to create their category, right? So we are definitely in this second category. We are educating our users on why they need forecasts as opposed to existing measurement infrastructure or long cycle modeling processes, because our clients model each and every basin, and every time it's a different project with an engineering company. We have one big model that is able to forecast river behavior pretty much anywhere. So it's a different approach. So our biggest challenge is education. We need to convince decision makers that they can trust satellites and AI-driven forecasting models as much as boots on the ground measurement sensors, especially for big decisions. So it takes time to build trust, and it's taken time to build trust, to gather validation data, to show the operational wins in the field using mostly client testimonials. Add to that the long procurement cycles that we've just talked about in the public sector, and it becomes a marathon and not a sprint. So I'm the sprinter type, so it's definitely a challenge for me to learn to run marathons. But in this respect, you had mentioned how I was, I mean, how my team was contributing. In this respect, my team is amazing. So marathon runners.
A good team of marathon runners. I love that. That's excellent. And I think there'll be a lot of founders listening who are, in the climate space, also in that category maker, group, where they are struggling with that same thing, where, a big challenge of it is going out and educating the customer on what the solution is, making them realize they need it. And it's not just a nice to have. And yeah, I think that's really interesting. Thank you so much. One of the markets that can definitely benefit from BWI's data is a hydropower operator. So when I was researching, that's one of the things I was reading up about that I found super interesting. And as I understand it, your platform can help those small scale hydropower systems to operate more effectively. Can you talk us through how and why that is, I suppose? And yeah, a bit more on, I suppose, your perspective on hydropower as a potential renewable energy source. Because at the moment, when I was researching, in the UK, it only accounts for 2% of our energy at the moment. So I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on, first of all, how does BWI help in that space? And second of all, why is there not more hydropower?
So, what a question. So I didn't know hydropower was only 2% in the UK energy mix. That's interesting. So so you have to know that globally it's about 12 to 14%, depending on the statistic sources. So it's actually the largest renewable energy source. So it's soon going to be outperformed by solar, but still the highest globally. So about hydropower. So to me, hydropower is an unsung hero in many energy mixes, especially for countries unlike the UK, blessed with mountains. So I'm just guessing here, but in the UK, I guess it's 2% only due to geography and legacy choices. But globally, hydropower is a flexible state renewable, of course, and stable energy source. So it's great for balancing out other intermittent energies that are wind and solar. Because you never know exactly with wind and solar when you're going to produce. So hydropower can be, so it balances well with solar that works during the day, hydropower works during the night. And also with hydropower, can be used as a battery. So when renewables like wind and solar, when there's no wind and at night or during winter, you can use this battery to produce energy and to balance your system. Balancing a system means to make a demand and offer match, right? Yes. And when the system, when the energy system is not balanced, it doesn't work. So this is where you have interruptions in power cuts, basically. So the challenges are real. There are environmental trade-offs. There is slow permitting in the hydropower industry for many good reasons, like biodiversity protection, or need to relocate populations, communities in some areas, which is obviously a major challenge. So it's not developing fast in Europe any longer. Europe, and I include the UK in Europe, is quite a mature market when it comes to hydropower. However, there is a lot of room for optimization. And why? Because hydropower production is a linear function to a river flow. So basically, when you know how much river flow there will be, you know how much electricity you're going to produce. So you may report to the TSO how much electricity you're going to produce. So you'll then avoid paying penalties. You'll be able to market your production in a smarter way, to trade, to distribute your electricity, and maximize your profit. So it's a pretty interesting market, albeit quite a small vertical, but very interesting.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, that's excellent. Thank you for explaining that. And so linked to that, and you mentioned the mountains. I noticed you were doing the Hydro Nepal project. Very famously, very mountainous. Tell us how BWI has been involved in that project to kind of drive the hydroelectric power in Nepal.
Oh, so thank you for that. So absolutely. So Nepal is a highly mountainous country, as you know, highest in the world. So Hydro Nepal is one of our proudest projects at BWI. So we're working with a state a government company named NES, so Nepal Electricity Authority, along with research institute called Tribhuvan, with a French ground sensor manufacturer called Paratronic, and with French authorities to digitize river monitoring using AI. So that means NES, so Nepal Electricity Authority, and as well as independent private producers, by the way, all over the country. So entrepreneurs will get real-time basin scale forecasts instead of river gauges measurements that belong to the past, because when they receive the measurement, it's part of the past, even though it could have been 10 minutes ago, or nothing at all. So we are helping to optimize power generation, to stabilize the energy system, to minimize infrastructure damage risk, because a flood carries the risk of damaging any equipment, and hydropower plants in particular, and to support new hydropower investments and developments in high mountain regions that are very sensitive, as you know, Cherry, to climate shifts. So
Yeah.
it's a super interesting project indeed.
That's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And tell us more about your founder journey with BWI. So, I mentioned there that you've had, many years experience of building, running, managing, leading other teams. How has that experience informed and influenced your journey at BWI? I suppose, how has it made you a better founder, that prior experience?
So you only know if you're a better founder at the next, in the next venture, right? So BWI for me is it's quite an interesting scenario, because I actually joined. I was per se. I am not the founder of the company. I was hired to build a project by my board, and basically there was a blank sheet. Some cash in the bank, and there was no market, no positioning, no product, obviously. So and it was really an entrepreneurial journey, because I had to position the company after having identified the needs, and there could have been no need, right? It could have ended like after a few months, say 3. Oh, guys, here's the key. Couldn't find any interesting niche we could focus on. So here's the key to the truck, and I hope we do something again in the near future. So, but it didn't happen like that. So, so your question was about how I used my past experience to build BWI, right? So
Yes.
what I brought from SaaS was a focus on process and scalability. So basically build the machine and then empower people in it, right?
Yeah.
After obviously having found the right people. So I had to learn, because at BWI the stakes are higher. like our clients might be flood-exposed communities or national governments, then I've learned to blend startup agility with scientific integrity and to value impact. So basically accuracy of the forecasts over vanity metrics, the usual MRR churn, long-term lifetime value creation, etc. So to me, doing a software that relies on research on scientific findings about the water cycle is new. So this is what I mean with scientific integrity. And impact is, okay, have we helped our client, our user, anticipate what happened, or have we contributed data to his early warning system, or has our early warning system helped make the right decision when it comes to evacuating or keeping people in place and telling them it's going to be fine. So this is quite challenging actually, because there's responsibility behind what we do.
Absolutely. I really like that, though, that you married the process and scalability piece of SaaS with that scientific decision making and impact metrics, and keeping the mission and I suppose the risks behind what you do first and foremost, rather than, as you said, some of those vanity metrics that you may find more in a traditional SaaS environment. And you said there about, build the machine and then empower the people within it. But of course, you have to find the right people. Talk me through your experience of building the team at BWI. When did you decide you needed to make those first hires? And what did that kind of early team growth look like for you?
Oh, so I joined back in June 2022, and our first engineer, Audrey, arrived on September the 2nd of that very same year, so about a couple months later. And our CTO joined on September the 15th of the same year, so he had to move from Poland to France, so it took him a fortnight longer, let's say. So I knew I had to build a team, and I think I'm good at that. So to me, it was obvious that it was not a software wrapper play, but more of a deep tech play, right? We had to build something from scratch that required that. And in this journey that we would fail, and we would have to do it again until we make it right. So I looked for people who weren't just highly technical, but also curious, open to the world, unafraid to cross boundaries between earth science and software. So in my opinion, a startup only wins with a team that wants to learn and build in equal measure. If you just learn, well, you cannot build. And if you just build, you are not looking back. And in a complex industry like ours, unless you have been in the field for ages and you know exactly what to build, you will fail. So bearing in mind that obviously the ultimate goal is for the SaaS to satisfy clients. So that's my hiring experience. And today we are about 25. So 3 years later, because we're recording this podcast in September 2025, so we are 25 people, and 80% engineers, about 10% PhDs, and the team is working really well, and I'm proud of them.
And do you work remotely or hybrid? How does that look in your organization?
Oh, we are not based remotely. We have 2 main offices in we were born in Toulouse, France, so it's the city of aerospace and biotech in southwest France. So we are half in Toulouse, half in Paris. We like to meet every day, so we come to office a lot. And when actually we are not in office, we travel the world. So we go visit clients in South Asia, in Central Asia, in Africa, in Central America. So obviously those who want to be remote, especially in the tech team, can be remote. But I meet my colleagues physically every week. So that's our setup.
Amazing. I love that. And you mentioned there about, having to have that balance between learn and build. How, when you're interviewing people, what techniques, I suppose, do you use to identify that you've got people that hold both in equal measure?
I would say mission fit comes first,
Yeah.
always. So the science, so hydrology, I didn't know anything about hydrology, so I've started reading books, and also the tech can be learned. Like some, I don't know, the backend engineer comes to me and says, I'm a great backend engineer, but I know Java and not Python. Well, Python can be learned, right? But curiosity, resilience, and a passion for tackling big systemic problems, that's non-negotiable to me. So that's what I'm looking for. Like, can I see something in their eyes that makes me think, okay, uh, we are adding a solution to the problem by adding this talent to the team. So we're adding a string, in the on the instrument. So
Yeah.
we've only succeeded so far because the team believes continuous adaptation is possible to
Mhm.
new geographies, to new political contexts, to new difficulties. Obviously, we need both to bring both empathy with client needs and technical rigor to the table to make the team work well together. So empathy with clients means everyone understands use cases and buyer persona, and technical rigor is obvious. I mentioned the scientific integrity. Let's consider these are synonyms. So that is my answer to your question.
I love that. I think that's great. And actually, interestingly, the things that you hold as of greater importance in your hiring process are the things that actually, AI, for example, are not going to be able to test for you, right? Because they're the things that are less likely to be on a CV. And I think it's quite interesting. I have lots of conversations about AI and how it'll affect the hiring process, speed up the hiring process. A lot of people think it can really improve the hiring process. But I think when what you're hiring for are those innate, values and softer skills and characteristics, they are, AI can't screen for that. So
Interesting.
yeah, I think it's quite interesting. And how's the fundraising journey been for you? Because although there is a kind of SaaS machine learning software element, you said, you really do view the company more as a deep tech hardware play. And it's notoriously difficult to fundraise for hardware and for deep tech. So how did you find that fundraising journey?
So we are not a hardware company. We are a pure software company. However, it has changed recently. But I'll explain that later. About fundraising. So far, the company is 3 year old. We have raised about 4.5 million euros. So that would be about £5 million and in these waters, and split into 4.1 million euros of equity and about 400K in debt. So the debt ratio is extremely low and reasonable for now. Obviously, fundraising in climate tech, is its own beast because you spend as much time explaining the why as the how. Uh, Fortunately, I didn't have to go through this whole process because, as I mentioned before, I was hired in being an entrepreneur at BWI, and uh, we were initially founded within a small business, a small French business that actually does hardware in the space industry called Himeria, and Himeria uh, decided to make of us an independent company, and
Okay.
agreed on very early to let us live our own life, uh, secure our own capitalization table, so our own investors, and be independent from them. So we moved from being 100% owned by Himeria, actually the holding company behind Himeria, but let's make things simple, to having Himalaya own today about 9% of the company.
Okay.
So they went from the only investor to minority shareholder. So now the company is owned by business angels, family offices, employees who have decided to invest in the company with their own money. We have gone through a pretty smooth process because some of our current investors were used to be or still are, actually don't know any longer, investors in Himalaya, so they just like the project. They cared about both returns, so ROI and resilience, and we didn't have to educate them about the scale of the water crisis and the potential impact of predictive data, because they had, they had the pitch, right? So my funding journey this time was different and easier, so I could focus on the business, on the product. I could go meet with clients, and I was not, sucked into the roadshow.
Yeah, that's a massive relief, I would imagine, having obviously
Absolutely.
done that in the past. And in terms of sort of future fundraising, that's amazing that you've kind of, as you said, had that fundraising process be quite smooth, have family office, business angels involved, people who already know the space and the scale of the problem, and that's taken you to where you are today. Will you need to raise again, do you think, to enter that next phase of growth? Is kind of VC funding, institutional funding, something that's on the cards in the future, or are you not sure yet?
We will know soon. So today, so 2025 will be a year that will make of BWI a profitable company
Nice.
for the first year. So slightly profitable, of course. So I've just mentioned we are a pure SaaS vendor, but it recently changed. So we consider ourselves not only climate tech, but also a space tech. And in the space industry, the value chain is divided into upstream and downstream. So we used to be a pure downstream company, so basically building services upon existing data sources. And we've just become an upstream company too, because we have been we have actually won a tender issued by our national space company and our environment ministry to actually demonstrate the value of high revisit water level data globally. And the way we are going to do this, and we have started to actually do it with a dedicated team, is to develop 2 small satellites equipped with radars that will look at water elevation, and by orbiting around the Earth, they will provide data every 48 hours for 10,000 measurement points.
Wow.
And this project is obviously a strategic major project for the company. Is just a demonstrator. Our goal at BWI is to validate our assumptions, so technical assumptions, to validate the technology, also to validate the markets, and to raise money, so equity and debt, to reinforce that infrastructure and move it from 2 to 10 satellites. And with 10 satellites, we can have 24-hour revisits over 20,000 measurement points globally. And this data is paramount to risk management companies like insurers, reinsurers, because what they need is to have an overview of water risks to feed their climate models. And so we think there is an opportunity, and we we need first to validate our assumptions to go to the equity market, to go meet the debt market and see what we can do. So this is on the table for the next 2 to 3 years.
That's fascinating. How amazing. So you said sort of 2 to 3 years where you'll be, getting these satellites up.
Absolutely. So launch will be in 3 years, but we will obviously know whether uh, the technology is fit for the mission before that. And we can also test the market by showing data samples by having pre-booking of data subscription. So we'll see how it goes, but we're in the process of building up that upstream team that I've mentioned.
That's fascinating. I did an interview in our last series with Camilla Taylor, who is the CFO of Satellite View. And she had some really interesting insights, especially around what I suppose, inherently risky business that is. There is only so much control, I suppose, you can have. And at the point that you send the satellite up, it's kind of out of your hands. But yeah, she said, that moment when you get the data back and you know that it's worked and the data coming back is of good quality, it's so rewarding. So
I've listened to that podcast actually, and what SatView does is about temperature, and we will look at water levels, water elevation. So we are highly complementary, and absolutely. First, obviously, there is no business without a risk, but space technology is different because it's a technology challenge like there's no second to none. I would say it's like designing a Formula One, but for space. So so it's
and if
hard to
something goes
service.
wrong, you can't just go and fix it. It's very far away.
Absolutely, the requirements are extremely high.
Yeah, what a fascinating challenge, though. Best of luck with that. And for investors that are interested in this space, and I know you said that that's not, the VC world isn't, something you've had to do yet in the fundraising journey. However, I'm sure there are lots of investors that listen to this. I know we've had previous series where we've featured the insights of those investors. For those that are particularly interested in adaptation technologies and resilience technologies, because that is an increasing area of interest for VCs, why should they look at hydrological forecasting and hydrology? Why is this a sector that they should be getting in on? And, what makes this attractive for investment?
Mm-hmm. So hydrological forecasting sits right at the intersection of climate adaptation and actionable environmental data. So water will define climate risk in the coming decades. It goes without saying. So solutions that help societies adapt are only going to grow both in relevance and in value. So the challenge is that it's technical, obviously, but impact investors are used to that. And sometimes there's a hard narrative outside water circles, but the opportunity is significant. Look at insurance markets, agriculture markets, energy markets, infrastructure markets, all need this water intelligence. So when you mentioned these, so energy is the largest business in the world, and the three others, infrastructure, agriculture, insurance, they are super prominent in all economies. So I think there is an opportunity. Obviously, there will we, for example, at BWI, will never be say Google, but we can be a fast growth, profitable company serving clients worldwide. And to many investors, that is already super significant. They wish they had 100% of their portfolio companies having taken this route. So
yeah, exactly. Fantastic. And looking ahead, what are you excited about over the coming years? I know you've already talked about the sort of the move upstream in the value chain and the satellite piece. Is there anything else that's going on in the world of BWI over the coming months that you'd like to share with us or that you're particularly excited about?
So the upstream team, I mean, the name of the mission is Revalto. I didn't disclose the name, but Revalto means revisiting altimetry for hydrology. so revisiting altimetry for hydrology, Revalto. So to answer your question about, what we are excited about for the next 2-3 years. So obviously we are pushing to unlock coverage for rivers and watersheds nobody's ever digitized before. So, for example, at the moment we're working for Asian Development Bank on a region of Bangladesh called Sylhet. It's challenging. We're working on the Panama Canal with another French company, Compagnie Nationale du Rhône, CNR, an amazing project. So we're going to do this with even more accurate forecasts and new partnerships, as just mentioned, especially in emerging markets like Africa and Asia. I mentioned it. So this is for the market side. On the tech side, so advances in satellite radar and machine learning will help unlock new applications. So I feel like we're just scratching, the surface of what's possible. So stay tuned, and I'll be happy to come back again to your podcast, Sherry,
Yes.
to tell you, to give your audience, your community, an update on where we stand in a couple of years from now.
I would absolutely love that. Yes, please. It sounds like it's going to be a very exciting few years. And I've been rounding out all of these episodes with a little bit of advice. So if there are founders listening that are a bit earlier on in their journey, are you able to share any resources that have really helped you on your journey throughout your career so far, whether that be books or podcasts, communities, mentors? What's really helped you, and what would you advise others to look at on their journeys?
So I think you cannot be good at what you do, which is a very, very microeconomic thing, if you don't understand the macros. So my habits have been about reading newspapers every day and listening to podcasts. So for example, I'm a huge fan of podcasts from The Economist because then I get, a better understanding of what's going on globally. And it's super important on a topic like water, because it is by definition a topic that is of interest to everyone. So I would really recommend to understand the macros, and to actually, it is not possible to understand them, but to have an eye on them, to watch them, because then you can be more relevant in your understanding of the micro problems that rule this world on a day-to-day basis. So that's number one. And number two, a good book. It's a little outdated, but I still love going through it during summer. It's called High Stakes, No Prisoners, and it's basically the story of Netscape, and software that you might not, unsure you have ever used it. Terry, I don't think so, but I had used it back in time. So it is the ancestor of Chrome and Mozilla Firefox and Safari.
Yeah.
And this story is not about benevolence, but it is super interesting to see that eventually you cannot succeed without an amazing team, a best in-class software architecture. And so I recommend High Stakes, No Prisoners.
Very interesting. I've not heard of that, but I will check it out. And I remember Netscape. I remember that as a name, but you're right. I think I'm too young to have ever used it in any sense. But yeah, fabulous. Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing all of those insights and the fascinating journey that you're on with Blue Water Intelligence. Very much look forward to part 2 in a couple of years' time. And thank you for those recommendations.
Thank you so much for having me, and for your smile, and for giving me this opportunity to be on my very first podcast, which means a lot to me. So thank you again.